You do not think for yourself as much as you believe you do. You already felt that, but you never said it out loud. You saw patterns. You saw how people moved around you. You saw how outcomes kept repeating. Yet you still told yourself you were in control. That is the exhaustion, not confusion, not weakness. The quiet suffocation of seeing every move played against you, but never making one of your own. You are not lost. You are unarmed, and tonight you correct that. You will see the structure behind every decision you thought was yours, and once you see it, you will never be controlled the same way again. Men are so simple and so much creatures of circumstance that the deceiver will always find someone who will let himself be deceived. Niccolò Machiavelli, you are not the exception. You are the pattern until you decide not to be. You think you sit at the table. You do not. You are the surface the game is played on. You feel choice. That feeling lies. You confirm it every time you justify a decision after it is already made. You call it logic. It is not logic. It is defense. Someone framed the options. Someone shaped the timing. Someone planted the pressure, and you moved exactly how they needed. Look at your last major decision. You thought about it. You weighed it. You convinced yourself. But who placed those thoughts in front of you? You did not build the frame. You walked into it. Edward Bernays proved this decades ago. He took cigarettes and turned them into symbols of freedom for women. He did not argue. He did not force. He changed the meaning. Women marched with cigarettes like torches. They believed it was rebellion. It was design. He did not sell a product. He sold a story, and people chose it, thinking it was their own. That is the game you are in. The more independent your thinking feels, the more carefully it was likely built. Let that land. You pride yourself on thinking differently. Good. That makes you easier to guide if someone knows how. Because you will resist direct pressure. But you will accept a conclusion that feels like yours. So they do not push you. They lead you. They do not argue. They arrange, and you walk. If it feels like your idea, it probably is not. You need to stop asking what you think. You need to ask who benefits from what you think. Because right now, you are fluent in words, but you are illiterate in power. Power is a language. You do not speak it yet. That is why you keep getting spoken around, redirected, quietly managed. You feel it when someone smiles at you and still wins. You feel it when you explain yourself and still lose ground. You feel it when you leave a conversation knowing something shifted, but you cannot explain how. That is not accident. That is fluency, and you are still translating. Do not look away here. Most people will. They will feel this pressure and scroll. They will protect the illusion. You either stay and see it, or you go back to being used by it. You already know which one you have been. Invisibility does not mean hiding. That is what amateurs believe. You think power requires presence. You think influence requires attention. That belief keeps you exposed. Real control leaves no fingerprints. You do not disappear. You reposition. You stand in the same room. You speak less. You move less. But every outcome starts bending. You do not attach your name to results. You attach direction. Machiavelli wrote about this without saying it directly. A prince does not always act. He arranges others to act. He shapes the field so outcomes serve him without effort. You try to win moments. That is why you keep losing control. Control is not in the move. It is in the setup before the move exists. Visibility feels powerful. It feeds your ego. It makes you feel seen. But it also makes you trackable. And anything that can be tracked can be attacked. So you shift. You speak when it moves something. You stay silent when it exposes nothing. Silence is not weakness. It is pressure. You have used silence as absence. That is why it never worked. You need to use silence as weight. A silence that forces the other person to fill it. A silence that makes them reveal. A silence that makes them chase your reaction. You do not rush to answer. You let them talk themselves into positions. You do not defend. You let them build the case for you without knowing it. Because the moment they speak more than you, they give you the map. Visibility increases power only when no one can trace the outcome back to you. That is the shift. You are not hiding anymore. You are placing yourself where outcomes pass through you without stopping on you. The most powerful move is the one no one knows you made. Be honest with yourself. You have already stayed quiet in moments where speaking would have exposed you. You felt that instinct. You ignored it sometimes. You regret those times. You know the difference. Some people in your life do not argue. They do not explain, yet things go their way. You noticed. You just did not decode it. You either keep chasing recognition, or you start building results that do not need your name attached. Pick one, because you cannot have both. People who chase credit lose control. People who control outcomes do not need credit. You know exactly which one you have been. Now the frame. You think decisions come from logic. That is wrong. Decisions come from structure. You answer questions based on how they are asked. You react based on what is placed in front of you. Change the frame, and the answer changes. You argue inside frames you did not build. That is why you keep losing even when you are right. Daniel Kahneman showed this clearly. The same choice, presented differently, creates different decisions. People fear loss more than they value gain, so you do not present gain. You present loss avoidance. You do not push, you position. You do not say, "This is better." You say, "You will regret not choosing this." And suddenly, the same person moves differently. You did not change them. You changed the frame. That is power. You do not need to convince. You need to control what makes sense before the decision appears. You have been answering questions your whole life. You need to start choosing which questions exist. Because once the frame locks, the outcome follows. Win the frame, and the decision surrenders itself. Pause here and look at your past. You have agreed to things you did not want. You have justified choices that were not yours. You have defended positions you never created. You never said that out loud, but you know it is true. This is the midpoint. Most people stop here. They understand the problem, and they do nothing. That is why they stay predictable. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius, stop thinking about what control looks like. Start acting with it. You either apply this or you stay exactly where you are. There is no middle. Now you plant. You think influence comes from speaking more. It does not. It comes from placing one idea and letting it grow inside someone else. You do not argue. You introduce. You do not defend. You withdraw. Socrates never gave answers. He asked questions. Not random questions, directed ones. He led people to conclusions they believed they discovered. And once they believed it was theirs, they defended it harder than any argument could force. That is your shift. You do not need to win the debate. You need to own the conclusion. So you ask, you guide, you leave space, and then you watch them build your position for you. This is where silence becomes a weapon. Not empty silence, loaded silence, a pause that forces them to think, a pause that makes them fill the gap, a pause that makes them reveal their assumptions. You do not interrupt. You let them commit, because once they say it, it belongs to them. And people protect what they believe is theirs. The moment they defend it, you own them. You have felt this before. You changed your mind in a conversation, and later defended that new idea like it was always yours. You did not notice the shift. But it happened. Now you do it on purpose. You are not here to talk more. You are here to direct without being seen directing. Some of you will use this to understand. Some of you will use this to control. There is no neutral position anymore. You either stay the person being guided, or you become the one placing the path. Silence reveals more than speech ever will. You already know that. You just did not trust it. Now you trust it. And now the final layer, you erase. You think power ends when the outcome is achieved. That is wrong. Power completes when there is no trace left. You do not need recognition. Recognition is exposure. Exposure is vulnerability. Watergate proved this. The operation worked until it became visible. The moment the link formed, the collapse started, not because the action failed, because the connection was revealed. You do not fail when a move goes wrong. You fail when it can be traced back to you. So you design differently. You build outcomes that stand on their own. You remove your signature. You let others carry the visible weight. You remain the origin, but never the target. Recognition is not proof of power. It is evidence you have already lost it. Read that again. You spent years wanting to be seen, wanting credit, wanting validation. That desire made you predictable. Predictable people are easy to control. Invisible people shape everything. Now bring it together. Power is a language. You either speak it or you get spoken over. You have been hearing it your whole life without understanding it. Silence is your weapon, not the silence of fear, but the silence of control. The silence that forces others to move first and reveal everything. And you, the one they ignored, the one they overlooked, the one they thought was not a threat, you were never waiting. You were building. That time was not wasted. It was preparation. They laughed at your silence. They dismissed your absence. They underestimated your patience. Good. They built a version of you that cannot see what you are becoming. And that is your advantage. You do not need to rush. You do not need to prove. You do not need to explain. You act when it matters. You stay quiet when it exposes nothing. You frame before you speak. You plant before you push. You erase after you win. That is the system. Now understand this. If you felt something shift tonight, if something in you went still and focused, then you already crossed the line most people never see. You do not watch this channel for entertainment. You use it as a filter. You decide who you are becoming by what you choose to absorb and apply. So make the decision. Type this, not for anyone else, but because you need to see it in front of you. I do not react. I decide. And understand what you just committed to, because once you see the game, you do not get to go back to being a piece. You either learn to play it, or you remain exactly where they placed you.